The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we're devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Friday, December 12th. I'm Jeremy Shore, Senior Director of Emerging Technologies and Digital Innovation at the Teaching Institute for Excellence in STEM, TIES, and moderator for today's conversation, which is the City Club's Bernice Kerrigan-Smith Forum on Education and also part of the City Club's Education Innovation Series. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is now widely embedded in industries. From workforce recruitment and healthcare to business operations and design, AI is transforming how people work and solve problems. In education, the conversation often centers on AI as a subject to be taught, a skill to be practiced, or a risk to be managed. Concerns around cheating and plagiarism have dominated early classroom discourse. However, our conversation today might not be what you're expecting it to be, because what we're seeing emerging now is a more productive shift, the opportunity to reframe AI not as the goal itself, but as an enabler that unlocks new possibilities for teaching, learning, creativity, and school design. Joining me on stage today are representatives from leading organizations that are moving beyond AI literacy alone and toward AI fluency. They're proving that AI is most powerful when it strengthens human capacity rather than replacing it. And they see AI as an enabler that expands what schools and educators can achieve, not the subject itself. Chrisabel Boulin leads Vero Learning, the first decision intelligence platform that measures how people think, adapt, and decide under pressure. Chief Innovation Officer Joseph South at ISTE and ASCD focuses on AI-enabled learning environments that amplify teaching and accelerate responsible innovation. And Mike Yates, the senior designer at Teach for America's Reinvention Lab, leads future of learning prototyping and helps students and educators invent educational solutions faster. And in my organization, TIES, we work with organizations, schools, and policymakers to scale innovation and deepen learning by using AI and other tools to expand educator capacity, transform systems, and change outcomes. This is the next leap forward for classrooms and schools, and today we'll hear more about how we can use AI as a force multiplier in education and empower educators to design the future of school. But before we begin, a quick reminder for our live stream and radio audience. If you have a question for our panelists during the Q&A portion of the forum, you can text it to 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will work it into the program. Now, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming Sybil, Joseph, and Michael. All right, now we can get a little bit less formal. Sybil is a development economist and founder of Vero Learning. She helps Fortune 500 companies hire for decision quality and foresight, not resumes, by turning lived experience into a measurable edge in performance and retention. She also makes me feel exceedingly underdressed here at the City Club in my sweater. Sybil, my wife and I talk a lot about how we think that experiential learning does as much to shape our children as their education. And I really kind of wonder what experiences shaped you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here with everyone. I think that my story really starts from my origin. I'm from two different worlds. I was born in New York, and I was raised by a single mom who would organize susus, which are community lending circles, so that she could help pay for me to go to Catholic school and so that I could have the opportunities afforded to me that kids with two-parent households did. At the same time, I'd go to Haiti every summer to visit my dad, and my friends in Haiti were just the coolest kids I knew. We'd have electronics like laptops or cell phones that we'd take to numerous Apple stores in New York, and no one could fix them. And you just wouldn't believe it. In like 30 minutes, these kids on the street would fix these phones. And they had no formal education, no formal training. And so I think that really shaped me early on. And it made me realize that the ability to learn is everywhere, but access to credentials is not. And so I think that was the first time that I started to question how we measure intelligence, and in particular, how education measures intelligence. And so, went on to the University of Cambridge, where I studied development economics, and eventually founded Vero Learning, where we help companies hire folks not for what they know, but for how they think, their lived experiences and their decision quality. And I think now that we're in this AI age, it's reshaping the value of education, even what it means, like what our potential and value is as human beings. So really excited to talk more.
Outstanding. And right next to Sybil is my friend Joseph South. We met, I think, the first time here in Cleveland like a decade ago.
That's right.
Joseph is the Chief Innovation Officer for ISTE ASCD, a nonprofit organization focused on transformative, research-backed learning experiences for students around the world. He previously led educational technology strategy for the United States at the U.S. Department of Education. Joseph, I think we all have up here, and a lot of people in this room, countless stories of students have been underestimated. But some teacher or some tool unlocks something in them and they change the world. But I've known you a long time, and I feel like you've probably never really been underestimated.
Well, I hope that's not a comment on my capacity. Actually, the funny story, so when I was being vetted for this position, it's a presidential appointee, so it's kind of a big deal. And you aren't really allowed to tell anybody about it. And so for almost 6 months, I had to keep it to myself that I was being vetted by the White House for this position. And I was dying to tell my family because this was going to be such a big deal. So finally, the day came when I was able to reveal to my family that I had this incredible opportunity. And I was in person, both of my sisters were in the room. And I said, I've been appointed by the president to lead educational technology for the United States government. And my older sister had this look of incredulity on her face and said, "Really?" And my younger sister looked at me and said, "You?" And I don't know that they were underestimating me at the time, but what I will say is that even though the learning curve of that position was straight up, and I've never, ever been in a position with a steeper learning curve than that, I did get there. And so I think the lesson is not that probably shouldn't be measuring people where they are, but what their potential to grow into something.
Absolutely. In my work around the country, I've had the opportunity to meet all sorts of really interesting and brilliant people and sort of add them to my network. And I'm so excited to bring all three of these folks to you today because Sybil and Joseph are two of the people that I call all the time when I want to think about things differently. And the third person that I call all the time when I want to think about things differently is my friend Mike. Mike Yates is a senior designer at Teach for America's Reinvention Lab, where he leads AI innovation and future of school experiments. From sneaker design studios to AI hackathons and workshops, he helps students and educators prototype what a radically different, more human learning experience could look like. Mike, probably all of us get asked some variation of the question, what's the best school model? And my answer is usually, well, all of them. Yeah. All of them are the best because it depends on the situation and the student. But I wonder if you have any experiences where a different school model has really been able to change things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a young educator, I found myself trying to create different school models, working in different school models because I grew up with a visceral hatred for school. School made me physically sick because I was so, my mind was just in so much of a different place than where I felt like my teachers were. I had a teacher in the 5th grade that told me the internet might go away, and I was like, yep, giving up on that place. I was able to play Oregon Trail and chat with a kid from Oregon. So in the 5th grade, I was like, you don't understand how significant this is. But I think to the question, I found myself working in this very strange school model at the time. It was around summer of 2016, and we were trying to replace direct instruction with what we were calling adaptive learning software at the time. And what was so unique about it is that the only way that this was going to work is if we had radical feedback from young people. And so I remember sitting around with 6 middle school students, and I was prepared with all of the things that I knew about learning and professional things. And the first question that was asked, they were like, so what do you think happens to Thanos? And I was like, what? They were like, you haven't seen every movie in the MCU? And right there I knew this is different. And I embarked on a journey where the school model that was right for them was the one that they got to help shape. And so I think the best school model is the one where young people and adults come and sit at the same table and they forge that model together.
All right, so the thing that we promised when we were sort of talking about this panel is that we weren't going to talk about the things that those of you who have been thinking about education and AI for a while probably have been thinking about. If you want to ask those questions later, you certainly can. What we want to talk about instead is really what's possible. So if we really treated this as kind of a blank slate moment, with AI as a core design material, core support, but not necessarily what's in the forefront. It can be, but what's in the forefront. What's one way that school might fundamentally change? Joseph?
Yeah, so I feel like our current approach to school is sort of antiseptic. We take the children out of their homes and out of their communities and put them in a specific place. And then we take a subset of everything that you might want to know about or learn about, and we standardize that for everyone, and they're all going to learn that stuff, and they're all going to learn it here, they're all going to learn it now, and they're all going to learn it at the same pace. And that's not really how any of us actually function, right? We have so many different varied interests and aptitudes. And so what I would do, and honestly, I would do this without AI, just for the record, but AI helps enable it, is I would change school so that it's connected to the community, that the problems that you're trying to solve are the same problems that your community is grappling with, and you're injecting those students into those environments. And I would open up the curriculum from being a few set of widely agreed upon but very narrow topics to be many, many topics of interest. And of course, no teacher can be an expert in everything a kid wants to learn about, right? I mean, no teacher knows what's going to happen to Thanos, but with AI, I mean, maybe you do.
I don't.
Okay.
I'm waiting like the rest of us.
Okay, great. But with AI, you can open up the support system to be much more differentiated for students. And so I'm not just talking about helping a student learn where they are, but helping them learn about the things they want to learn about and do it in a way that's relevant to their community.
That sort of makes me wonder, Mike, in your bio, you talk about how you're looking to design more human-centered learning, but then your example is kind of more digital learning. So don't those counteract each other? What's the balance between these things so that we're highlighting human skills, human needs, human challenges, using the tools without letting one overtake the other?
Yeah, it's almost, if you use tools appropriately, it's almost the opposite, right? I've said this for a long time, but the only good technology in school is technology that makes room for more meaningful human moments. And if it doesn't do that, like hold it to that bar and get rid of it if it doesn't do that. The school that I was mentioning, a lot of people assumed when they heard about the model, like, oh, kids are just gonna be on laptops all day. Because all of our paradigm for school is the one that you see in the movies. Boring teacher in front of the room, chalkboard, lockers in the hallway, there's some bully kid who's got like a runny nose, it's running down the hall. Like, that's what we think of as school. So when you think technology in school, most people go, aha, computer labs. I've seen that before. But instead, you could think about WeWork, where there's 100 people in the building, all of them are working on something different, but they're at tables, collaboratively, working together. They're at the kombucha station. They're laughing, they're seeing each other in the hallway. You have a communal experience. There's a gravity of work that is sort of pulling people in and out of work. That is what that school looked like, and not like the computer lab example. So by way of example, like if you find the right pieces of technology in the room and you bring them into your building in a responsible way, actually you free up students to be more of themselves. You free up more time in the day to have the conversation about what's gonna happen to Thanos, or like on Christmas Day, like what are we gonna find out about Vecna? Like that's really important, right? Those things sort of bond your school together in ways that I just haven't seen without leaning on technology in creative ways. Because I haven't seen enough margin be able to create, I haven't seen any school be able to create enough margin in the day to be able to do those things.
Sybil, I think one of the things that a lot of folks in this room, something that I think about and worry about is I agree with all of this, but I do also worry, if I radically change what it looks like in a school, are those students going to get jobs? Are they going to get hired later? Because the employers are looking, they went through a traditional model, they're looking at a traditional model. So in your experience working with, under the umbrella of economics, but with employers who are looking for evolving skills, What does that look like, and are they concerned that we're going to stop manufacturing these same sort of cogs that we've been manufacturing for a long time?
Yeah, I think that the truth is we have to realize that we are living in a new economic era. So the old economic era was knowledge-based. So you learn things and you perform tasks. And so our education system is very much set up for that. But what's happening now is that AI is automating tasks, and it can do it, quite frankly, faster than we can reskill folks. And so what's really important is to realize that humans are not going to be replaced by AI, but perhaps the value of what we provide to the workforce is shifting. And so I think what's really going to be important is not teaching people like what to think, but essentially helping them make better decisions. So we're moving into a perspective-based economy where if AI can do all the tasks, then human beings are going to be in charge of the why and the when and the what's next. And so a lot of that really is decision intelligence. How do you solve problems? How do you make decisions under stressful situations? How do you prioritize when everything's on fire? We're constantly living in a world where change is inevitable, and we need to foster an education system that teaches people to be adaptive, that teaches people situational judgment. And I think that that's what we're seeing. The World Economic Forum has actually stated that 70% of emerging jobs actually require adaptability over credentials. And I think that's huge, and that's something that we really need to pay attention to. And 85% of executives today say that adaptive judgment is more important than technical skills. And so I think AI is shaping what education even means when we're living in an automation economy.
It's really striking, just the thought that someone might be less prepared for a job if AI is in their school. And I know there's this issue of cognitive laziness, and people are concerned that because they're going to outsource their thinking to the AI and then they won't learn how to think, right? But it's interesting when you talk to actual students, and some are in the room today, a lot of them are using it to augment their education. And so if you think about this difference between automation and augmentation, I think that's the key. And there was a recent study of radiologists. And what they found is that, and this is fascinating, that radiologists by themselves, not as good as AI looking at the scans. AI better than the radiologist, but the radiologist augmented with AI better than either one, right? And that's the world that we're headed to. And it's really interesting. I was at a school where they had a panel, and they had a student on the panel, which was awesome because we really need the students' voices. And they were talking about all their things and how they might ban it, and they weren't sure. And then the student said, "Can I say something?" And they're like, "Sure." They're like, "You guys are going to make your policies and do what you do. I know that, but I need this for my job. And so I'm going to be using AI no matter what you people decide." And it's kind of like a mic drop moment, right? And I mean, if students don't have those skills, they're not going to be able to get the jobs.
And what's I think interesting too is that when we start having conversations with university professors and with employers, we're already starting to see an economic divide between access to these tools and students who were able to use them in high school and were able to use the pay versions and the higher powered models, and those that weren't. So this is kind of this weird inflection point where if we do this right, and we probably won't, but if we do this right...
So confident, Jeremy. With so much hope. Glad the sun's out.
If we do this right, it's really a massive equalizer. But if we do it wrong, it has the potential to create an economic divide like we've never seen before. Mike, I know that one of the things that you and I, and frankly a lot of folks in this room who are friends, we've been talking for 25 years about the ways that schools need to shift and change, and it never really happens because it's this established, entrenched system. Maybe this is the opportunity where our hands are going to be forced, and that's terrifying, but also good. What does that start to unfold as? Do you think for a public school? I see a table of friends over there, public school superintendents. They still have state tests they have to think about. They still have levies they have to pass to keep these schools open and functioning. So how do they balance this shift with these entrenched systems that I think are going to start to fall away but haven't?
I think this is where you experiment. This is where you create margin in your life as a school leader, administrator, teacher to start experimenting. One thing, obviously, we hear it all the time. People, they're like, what are we going to do about the essays? But we're not asking the right questions. So I think there's like a set of questions to be asked that both hover underneath and above all of the basic academic questions. Like the real question is whether or not writing 5-paragraph essays was ever a really great way to show what you know, right? Like, is there another way other than the 5-paragraph essay? The truth is that we've become really comfortable because so much of the way that education works is about making adults in the building comfortable. Like if you follow my policies, we're good. If you follow my classroom procedures, we're good. You call me what I want you to call me, and then we're good. But for the first time, students now have something in their pockets that is more powerful, faster, and smarter than you. And so naturally, we feel threatened as an industry. But when you feel the threat, my advice is to lean into whatever that is. Ask yourself, maybe for the first time in your career, dog, what if I'm wrong? What if there is another way? Right? And I guarantee you, like the other way that you find will be much more exciting and much more valuable to your classroom. Your students will like you more, or they might hate you more, but they're gonna learn so much more from your classroom. They're gonna benefit so much more. Like I actually think at the end of the day, there's all these heady things that we can say about like how you can get students jobs, how you can use technology responsibly in schools. Like there's really one thing that you need to be optimizing for in the school system, and AI is gonna force everyone to do it. You optimize for time. How much more time on task can I get with X? If you are LeBron James, if you're a student in here and you happen to be that good at basketball, the whole city of Cleveland probably knows it. And to be where LeBron James is, you need more time in the gym. So the question is, as a school, how can I optimize for that student to spend more time in the gym without sacrificing the other things that we know are very important? Because LeBron James is who LeBron James is because he's got the athletic talent and he's got the financial prowess, right? So he had somebody doing that for him. You think about anybody who's the top of any industry, they are as well-rounded of a person as they can be because they had people who stepped into their lives. Now we can do that at breakneck speed. So it doesn't matter if you want to be a rocket scientist, dancer, basketball player. If you can optimize for doing more of that, then that's where you're going to find success. And so whatever is the barrier between you, educator, and helping students do more of the things that they love to do, that they're uniquely gifted and talented at, especially if it's your ego, AI is going to force us to put it down. So like, get ahead. Start putting it down today. Start finding new ways today. There's organizations and like places where you can go. Call Joseph. He's got ideas. He has this really big conference that he runs. Lots of ideas there. So I would like highly recommend like seeking out any organization that has innovation in the title. I don't know. There's one local around here. Oh yeah. Call that guy. Right. It's like call your local like the local people in your community that can help you sort of think through these things, because most of the time you don't see you really don't see the forest for the trees. Like sometimes I get it, like you're in it, you're executing, you're focused on the next 10 to 24 months at best, and you need somebody who's gonna partner with you to help you see around the corner to say, hey, in 5 years, this is what the world's gonna look like, and help you design that. And so while I'm joking, I really do mean it. Like if you're inspired to do something different, actually call Jeremy. You can call me too, I just don't live in Cleveland.
So with your work as an economist, we talked about the World Economic Forum, and they had this recent report, January of last year, I think, the Future of Jobs report, and it's something Joseph and I are both kind of obsessed with, because what you notice when you look at the predicted skills for 2030, like not 2045, we're talking 3.5 years from now, you don't see academic discipline skills on that list. You see AI and technological skills, and you see leadership and problem solving, those types of skills. I know you're working with employers in this space. How are we to know, though, that that's not kind of this short-term blip, that this AI bubble's not going to pop, and that we're going to totally rethink what we're doing in schools, and then all of our students are going to be in a bad place because what they really needed was, chemistry 101
Right.
or whatever?
Yeah, think about it like this. In the industrial age, reading and writing was essential. There's absolutely no way that you could get a good job if you were not literate, right? But now you have a tool in your pocket that is incredibly smart and knows everything. And so the value of rote memorization it's not there anymore. So human beings having to memorize things and regurgitate it, there really is no value in that. So there really is no going back. And so what we're seeing is that we're moving towards an economy where your behaviors actually are going to matter more than the credentials you have. And so if you think about it, skills are really a snapshot of what you can do in one instant. And as we mentioned, AI is gaining skills faster than we can reskill folks. In addition to that, your resume really is just a snapshot of your history. So the only thing that really compounds in an economy like this, it really is your lived experience. And your lived experience, I'm defining that as how you make decisions under pressure, how you adapt as situations change. And so that is only going to become more and more valuable as time goes on. And so I think it's really important that we redefine the value of a test, right? We talk a lot about kids are using AI to cheat on tests. Well, if that's the case, then we're testing them on the wrong things, right? Because that means that is no longer valuable in our economy. And I know it's really hard. It's a huge shift. But I think it's exciting as well because degrees have a lot to do with the access that you have. There are a lot of different intelligences that we haven't been able to really address. And so I think AI gives us the opportunity to understand why a top employer is a top employer, and not just the school they went to or the skills they had, but how do they think? How do they make decisions when the script falls apart? How do they adapt as situations change? And I think we can use this technology to identify students and to help them understand what sectors they're a good fit for, to help them understand where their natural aptitudes are going to be appreciated, where they're going to be successful in the workforce, and create these roadmaps. And so I think we can take the guesswork out of education. And I think that we're living in a time where economic development and education have to go hand in hand. There's no way to separate them anymore.
Joseph?
So I agree with that. And I want to be careful that we aren't giving the impression that content knowledge doesn't matter, right? Because you can't be a physicist and not know physics. You can't be a chemist and not know chemistry, right? But I think there's two things to keep in mind. One is that the way we've been going about that needs to change, right? So we've been using, I'll take the 5-paragraph essay, because we're like, okay, this teaches a student like how to think and organize their thoughts. And if we don't do that, there will be no way for a student to think and organize their thoughts. You're like, well, that's not true, right? These are two different things. There's an artifact and there's the process. And so we can change out the artifact for something more meaningful, but we need to preserve the process of helping them develop that critical thinking. And same way with chemistry, right? We don't want them to not learn chemistry, but learning it by filling bubbles on a sheet is probably not the best way to learn chemistry, right? And so if we can change that out to be something that's more applied, that's more hands-on, that's more authentic, then they will learn chemistry. In fact, they'll learn it better. And not only will they learn chemistry, but they'll learn chemistry the way a chemist does chemistry, right? And that gets to that lived experience that I think you're talking about. And then that moves us forward. So I want to just honor the people who are concerned that AI could just sort of come in and hollow out everything, and we're just like, I don't know, ask AI. That is a real risk, but I think there's ways to manage it.
Anyone who's embarrassed that they're afraid of these tools should not be. This is terrifying. Right, yeah. This is truly, it keeps me up at night. These are terrifying things that could go great and could go definitely not great. It is about time to jump to questions, but before we do, I'd like to do just the fastest lightning round, so pithy, of this question. So let's imagine just for a second, it's I was going to say 10 years, but that's too long a time horizon with these tools. It's 5 years, it's 3 years from now. What's something in sort of traditional education that we hold sacred, that we think's important, that you think that AI might show us was never actually all that important? Who wants to go first? Joseph.
Grade levels.
Yep. Oh, Joseph, you stole mine.
Start thinking of a backup.
Pull out ChatGPT.
Yeah,
It'll give you 10.
Mike, you got a backup?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have so many. I have a long list of things that
Mike.
Standardized testing.
Yeah. 10 years ago, hopefully.
Yeah, right.
Sybil?
Yeah, just rote memorization.
Absolutely. All right, so we're about to begin the audience Q&A. For those just joining via our live stream and radio audience, I'm Jeremy Shore, Senior Director of Emerging Technologies and Digital Innovation at the Teaching Institute for Excellence in STEM and moderator for today's conversation. Today we're talking about how to harness the power of artificial intelligence in education. Joining me on stage is Sybil Boulin, President of Vera Learning, Joseph South, Chief Innovation Officer at ISTE ASCD, and Mike Yates, Senior Designer of the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org or live radio broadcast at 89.7 WKSU IdeaStream Public Media. If you'd like to text a question, please text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have the first question, please?
My question is not meant to offend anybody in the audience. Got to say that, okay? So don't take it personally. There are millions of people who put the guy who's in the White House, who put him there. And Sybil, you mentioned a term that's decision intelligence. So there's a rumor that a lot of the people who put him there were not really educated. So if they had had access to AI, could that have helped them make a better decision?
I'm so glad she directed that one to you.
Just start off with something light. Light and non-controversial. Sybil.
I'd love to start.
Thank you for your question. Appreciate that. Where I can't really talk on the politics of things, but I definitely think that the idea of like decision intelligence and that making better decisions is something that is important. We're living in a time now where AI allows us to look at micro decisions, to look at like behaviors that folks make, and to understand like how does that equate to success, whether we're talking about retention or performance if you're an employer, or whether it's critical thinking and reasoning if you're an educator. And so I think that it's really important that we start to think differently about what learning is and start to shift from the idea that learning is simply knowledge-based and start to think more about how we can teach students about like risk mitigation when it comes to decision making, or how we can think about prioritization as things are shifting. And so I think that we can all make better decisions, and I think that we can use AI to understand how micro decisions have effects in ways that we couldn't before, and that definitely expands beyond the classroom.
And Mike, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I just will give a direct answer to the question. I think mathematically there's no way that can actually, that the premise of the question can be 100% true. But what is interesting is the type of education that the question begs, right? Like the type of education that you could, like the experience that you could build from that place of what sounds like a place of pain is you could build experiences using AI to help connect students or even adults to the idea of like public discourse or civic education, right? There are organizations like Local Civics, which is one, which used to be Cleveland-based, that actually is doing that. They're exploring like how do you use AI to help expose students to multiple viewpoints. There's a website called Answer the Public. You can type in any question in the world and you can figure out what people are saying about this online. That's an example of how technology is bringing you closer to the conversation. So like, do we need a more educated populace? Sure, like of course. And AI is a tool that can help you do that. So for me, it's not about like whether or not the people that voted for X candidate are educated or not. Like it's the fact that like in every election, somebody is going and button mashing at the polls, and we need to stop that in general, like period. And I think AI is a way, like AI can help us do that for students at younger and younger ages.
I have experience teaching kindergarten, many years, Head Start, state pre-K. Currently, I work for the Literacy Cooperative as director of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library for Cuyahoga County. And my question is, the research is really clear that young children don't learn effectively by looking at screens, on screens. Screens just do not build the neuronal connections that we need to have happening in their brain to wire that brain for successful reading and writing, or anything for that matter. They really need real interactions with real objects, people, books, and we want to promote curiosity in them as well. So how do you manage this new technology to ensure, to protect young children, and early childhood goes to the age of 8, to protect them and to ensure that we have well-developed brains in this society? Thanks.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the question, and when I was at the department, I had the opportunity to work on a brief about EdTech in early learning that we released with the American Associate of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And so this is what I would say. It goes back to what Mike said earlier. We know that the human connections are essential, right, when, for all of us, but especially for young people. And so when the technology is in the forefront, right, then it interferes with the human connections. But it can also be in the background and has the potential to enhance those connections. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So one, I was out with my child in a park, and we heard a bird chirping, and there's an app that you can go on, and it will listen to the bird, and it'll tell you what kind of bird it is, right? It's using AI or machine learning at least, to know what that bird call is. So then I could have a conversation with the child about the bird, right? Another one is, there's apps that support a parent and a child doing yoga together, right? Which the parent on their own may not know how to do that, and the app, can adapt it to children's bodies so they can do that too. And so I think we have to remember it's called I think it's called co-viewing. I don't like the word viewing though. I think it should be called co-learning. But if you co-view the technology with an adult, then it can actually enhance that relationship.
I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 4-year-old. The 4-year-old uses AI all the time, but she's never on a screen to use the AI. It's these types of interactions. It's knowing that there's no question, no curiosity she can have that we can't dig deeper into, that we can't establish new learning paradigms and new ideas from. There's never an opportunity never a time when I say, I have no idea. I mean, maybe next week we can go to the library and figure this out. It's right now. We can dive right in.
Yep. I'm a computer science professor by training. So I had a flashback moment to maybe 15 years ago. I was standing at a national computer science education conference talking about what we were thinking of at that time, right? And I drew this parallel to math education. I mean, if you think about what happens in K-12 math classrooms, all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade, everything is really built up to getting a student ready for that first calculus class in college. And if we apply the same kind of logic to any other discipline, right, any other field, the conversations that we're having today about AI, especially AI augmented learning, upends everything that we know about education policy, right? I mean, I'm looking around the room. There's administrators, there's policymakers, that work in K-12 education. We could do that, but there's millions of kids in school today. So what is the right, and really, Joseph, maybe your federal policy lens brings this to this thing. Like, how do we do that in terms of adjusting future-looking policy without sacrificing an entire generation of kids that are going through what we'll consider traditional learning that's being upended?
So I think all of us could address this, by the way. I'll start and then open it up. But, part of the question is, are we already sacrificing a current generation of students to the old ways of doing things, right? So, I mean, I would turn that question around and say, what are we gaining with the current system? What are we losing with the current system? And right now, I think, and this, I'm realizing this invokes everybody. I'm just thinking about your work as well. What we're gaining is a certain set of requirements that lead to a gate to open, like college acceptance, that then leads to further experiences that leads to another gate to open, which is a job. But a lot of those are just tags. They're not experiences. School is built on a knowledge transmission model, not expertise development model, right? But in the actual workforce, people want expertise. And so I think that we're currently sacrificing time where students can gain expertise in things that matter deeply to them and that matter to the world for knowledge transmission. But from a policy point of view, to actually address the question, and I'll be brief here, what we need is guidelines, not rules, because this is changing too fast for us to set hard and fast rules. They're going to last for a year or 2 or 10 years. And we know that in policy, you set a policy, and those things have staying power. They're crazy. Like the Carnegie Unit. We don't have time for the Carnegie Unit, but it's stayed forever, right? And so if we can focus on guidelines and allow for the experimentation that Mike was talking about earlier, then we can head the right direction. We do need to learn from what's out there. So I guess the last thing I would say is you need federal and state mechanisms, ideally, that bring back the learnings into something that can then be reviewed and shared out. And that's the most effective approach.
This conversation is kind of why I have faith that we will figure it out, because I think the ecosystem is strong enough. I personally think about policy 0 minutes out of every day because Joseph is alive. Like, because Joseph exists, and I can like trust, I legitimately can trust, like, there are people that I know in the ecosystem who are obsessed with this, right? And like who have the experience, and when I say obsessed with it, I mean like they enjoy doing that. I would not survive if I was like having to do policy, but I think if there is a way, I love what you said, Joseph, about like there's something that needs to be informal here, like a set of recommendations as opposed to hard and fast policy, because the Silicon Valley is more powerful today than it ever has been. And Silicon Valley is young, and it is brash, and it actually does not care about governmental policy. The story I'll tell you, in my state where I live in Texas, there was one time where we were doing the school project, and we had school in a hotel, and in the next ballroom over, there were all of these billionaires that were walking in. It was a very strange scene, and I was like, what is happening? Well, they were meeting because they were trying to devise a plan to build a Hyperloop train from Austin to Houston to Dallas. The reason is obvious. They just want to be able to access talent from anywhere in the state. And they were trying to devise a plan to get the state of Texas to pay for it. Well, our governor was like, absolutely not. And they were like, fine, we'll do it ourselves. Right? And like, that was one of those examples where I'm like, like they're not waiting on the state of Texas to write the law. Like as soon as the state was like, no, they're like, bet, we got it. Like they're hiring people. Like a friend of mine is now over the Austin to Houston loop. Like it's insane. That's where the way that this is going. Like OpenAI is not waiting on policy to be written. What I think is interesting is that there's some part of the solution though, that like it does actually exist in like good pedagogy in the past, right? So a part of like, when you actually stop talking about like the rules of school and you start talking about human development, this is why mind meld when we're talking about getting rid of grade levels. When we talk about grade levels, it's when you like take students and you fix them to a set of content and experiences based on what they should know because they're 6. Well, all 6-year-olds are different. I have 4 kids. I have a 6-year-old, I have an 8-year-old, I have a 10 and 11-year-old. My 10-year-old academically is in the 8th grade. And she should be allowed to go as far as she wants to academically. If anybody's familiar with the classical model of education, this is the thing that I'm recommending that people actually reach back for, because it provides the proper guidelines and guardrails to where you use AI and where you say no. Classical education is broken down into 3 phases. Grammar phase is what we know of as elementary, and in the grammar phase covers many age levels, and it basically says this is where you're getting the building blocks to life. This is where you learn that like red and blue are different, and like 2 + 2 most times equals 4. That's where you learn that. The logic phase is your next phase. This is what we know of as middle school. And if you teach middle school, you'll hear familiar things. This is where young people start to ask questions about the world around them. They're now taking those building blocks that they got in the grammar phase, and they're like, yeah, but what if 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4? So they learn about base number systems. Then you get to rhetoric, and this is where students are using everything that they've learned in grammar and logic, and they are now creating new things. So if you use that as a way to organize the way that we think about human development and access to AI, like in my house, I homeschool my children. They don't get access to AI until they're in rhetoric phase learning. Because now I know that you have enough building blocks to where when you see that image, you're like, that's not a human. When the AI hallucinates, you're like, I'm gonna go look that up elsewhere because I don't think that sounds right. Like that's the protection. So I think if we can figure out how to like find the right pedagogical backbone and then make a national set of recommendations, then that can change, that will change in 6 months. I think we'll probably get to a set of policies in like, I don't know, 15 years.
To jump in really quick too, I think that AI gives us an incredible opportunity now to actually look at someone's career trajectory. So we can understand why someone who doesn't necessarily have the right credentials on paper was successful. And we can, in the background, assess students and understand at this young age, like where their aptitudes are. And we can actually individualize the learning that they receive to actually help them when they go out there in the real world and enable them to be able to get a good job. And so I think using AI in the background and not just studying what people know, but how they decide and how they move through the world and basically matching that to other folks that are out there in different industries is something we've never had access to before. We've never understood why two people with the same path might take a different trajectory. And so I think it's really important to look at all the new data that AI allows us and to create personalized pathways where education and career are synonymous and upward mobility and career are synonymous because we know a lot more about how people think and decide. And so we can instill this in students a lot younger.
Hello. Our next question is a text question. It says, one of the big AI stories of the last year was about young people who emotionally bonded with chatbots and ended up taking their own lives. This points to the real dangers of these relative untested technologies. How can school address this specific challenge and prepare students to forge appropriate relationship with tech?
Yeah, this is the heavy question that we think about a lot. And I know Mike and I have a good friend of Mike's, but an acquaintance who's kind of, you want to talk about Michelle's work maybe a little bit?
That's exactly, yeah. Michelle Culver, who founded the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America, which I will take just a second to say that was a much larger feat than just saying the word. She just stood up a new team, like cashed in 20 years of hard work and sweat equity and created a team of people that would openly disagree with her, including me, all the time. So this is a very brave effort. She moved on from the lab and created something called the Rhythm Project where I got to see this happen for her in live time, and it was really exciting. Where she started, when she started getting access to language models, she started asking the language models awkward questions to see how it would respond. She was like, "Hey, like, do you love me?" And the language model was like, "Of course I do." And she was like, "Oh, this is weird." So now she has an organization called Project Rhythm that does explore AI at the intersection of relationships. It's asking the really hard question, what does it mean for human connection when these machines are more and more human over time? I built this AI course that all of our incoming core members at Teach for America take. And there's a movie clip at the beginning of it. There's a clip of the movie Her. Anybody heard of this movie? The movie Her, if you haven't, nobody watched it when it came out because it was very scary. It came out in 2013. This is a Joaquin Phoenix movie, which is why a lot of people were probably like, yeah, that guy's a weirdo. And they didn't watch it. But it's about a man who falls in love with his operating system. And the operating system is voiced by Scarlett Johansson, which, by the way, she sued an AI company for trying to use her voice from that movie. And, so when you see Scarlett in movies, she's doing it for the love of the game. Like, she don't have to be there. But that movie is so interesting because in 2013, somebody saw a world where that would happen, and it's happening now. And so I think what to do in schools, I will go back to sort of like previous answer, which is I really do think there's something to figuring out what the gates are for access. And a part of the gates for access have to be this understanding that AI is not human. And I found it really interesting. There's an interesting interview with Sam Altman, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a host that I disagree with a lot. So maybe it was like Tucker Carlson or somebody. I don't know. But the interviewer is trying to trap him. The interviewer is trying to say, don't you think it's okay that your AI allows suicide? And Sam Altman says, you know what, I'm going to pause and think about that. And he goes, yeah, upon further thought, no, I don't think it's okay. I don't think we're going to allow that. And I found that interaction so interesting because a lot of people, what this interviewer wanted Sam Altman to say is, well, people are different, and we let people do what they want. We empower people, but actually he was like, no, we're working on it. We're going to fix it. So I say that to say not that you should trust Sam Altman or OpenAI, but to actually say that there is a thoughtful conversation that needs to be had among students. Like, it's not true that like all students blindly trust AI. I think if you talk to the students in the room, you will find more skepticism than maybe even that you have. But I do think there's something to gating your human development and learning journey and making sure that people understand that these are not human. They're not trying to be human. On some level, the people who are pulling the strings behind the scenes, Wizard of Oz, so to speak, like they understand that these machines should not try to be human as well. But that understanding, I think, is fundamentally very important.
It's, I think, important also to remember that these are tools that have positive and negative uses. Michelle's work also shows that there are instances and tools with reductions in suicidal ideation where students can actually access help in a more rapid and deep manner than they can in many other circumstances. That's not to say they should have unfettered access. It's not to say there's not a lot of risk involved. But it is to say that there are positives and negatives. Just you want to quickly close?
Just briefly, I think because I want to get to this question, for a school, there's this notion of digital citizenship. And we teach students responsible use of technology. And this is something that has to be taught. They're not just going to figure this out by osmosis. And so this is one of the ways that we can proactively have those conversations with the students so that they can start discerning between what's real and what's artificial.
During this panel, I've noticed that a lot of the connections to education is just about like careers. That's not all education is to me. So education to me is the ability to learn. Like those 5-paragraph essays, isn't it just about the 5-paragraph essays, writing it and having to have a grade on it? That's something that we can call a sacrifice for being able to put stuff together, to analyze, to understand, to connect. These are things that I see as like essential human qualities. Other things that we must sacrifice for AI, like the other question mentioned, is like, I'm so nervous.
You're doing great. This is awesome.
Keep going.
Is like the rates with underage people in the AI, what they're telling them. We see this with the first, internet. When the internet first came out, my mom told me that nothing was restricted. You could do anything that you wanted to do on there. And in a way, especially in this now day and age, that it's dangerous. So my question for you, considering all of the sacrifices that we have to make, is it worth it?
And I can't think of a...
Do you just want to change the seats with her, Jeremy?
I can't think of a better, I assume at this point, final question. What do we think about this? I don't know. Maybe it's too late to undo it. But whether it is or not, how do we retain that humanity? How do we retain the focus on humanity and make sure that these tools support learning and personal growth and all of the things that she spoke about?
I think that the future of learning has to be lived experience has to become the curriculum. Your lived experience has to be what we teach. So helping people hone their self-confidence, helping people understand that their community knowledge, that the resilience that they've built in their life actually has a value, needs to be important. And AI gives us the opportunity now where we don't have to say this is too difficult. We can actually individualize how we teach. We can actually focus on things that before we thought were softer skills. And we can really make the classroom about what kids really care about and what's really going to be important for them. And so I think AI is only worth it if we make lived experience at the center of it, if we keep the humanity of it all, and we use this as an opportunity to make education about a lot more than what we know, but about what's possible and how we think. And so thank you so much for that question. I think that that's amazing.
I was a moderator for a panel of students last night, and one of them was a writer, and he said, I stopped using AI to help me write because I wasn't learning the discipline of writing. And I'll bring it in later to revise. And so I think we need to be really intentional about when and how we bring it in. And if we do that, we can preserve the productive struggle that's always been a part of learning.
And I think that the important thing for us all to think about, a lot of educators in this room, is that the reality is the only people, in my opinion, that can guide us towards the future that this young woman was talking about are educators, our schools. We are the place, we are the only place that can ensure that students have the skills to navigate the future, to use this as a tool and not let it take over of their lives in really negative ways. We are a tiny bit over, so I'm going to go through this fast. Thank you, Chrissy Bulin, Joseph South, and Michael Yates for joining us at the City Club today. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. Today's forum is a part of the City Club's Education Innovation Series in partnership with Nordson and the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation. It is also the Bernice Kerrigan Smith Forum on Education, made possible thanks to the members of her family in honor of her distinguished teaching career, which started in Licking County and eventually led her to teach at Cleveland Public Schools during and after World War II. We'd like to thank the family for their continued support. City Club would also like to welcome students joining us from Chardon High School, as well as the guests at tables hosted by the ESC of Northeast Ohio Dream Team, Friends of Bernice Kerrigan Smith, Magnificat High School, Nordson, Teach for America Ohio, and TIES. The City Club will be off for the holiday break, but will return in the new year on Friday, January 9th. They will be joined by Nick Barledge, CEO of Rock Entertainment Group, which oversees some names you've probably heard of here in Cleveland, the Cavs, the Monsters, the Charge, and more. He'll discuss the goals and plans for the organization itself and the City of Cleveland. You can learn more about this forum and others at cityclub.org. Thank you once again to our speakers and to our members and friends of the City Club. I'm Jeremy Shore. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.